What's going on, everybody? I go by the name of Curry, and I want to thank you guys for joining me here today on SneakerPhetish. A sneaker 10 years in the making. That's what the message was behind the latest collaboration between Tom Sachs, Nike Craft, and Nike. Today we're taking a look at what is known as the most boring sneaker possibly to ever release from Nike, why it's anything but boring, why Nike is so good at marketing, and why this sneaker is actually the sneaker that one of the largest YouTubers never got. Without further ado, let's get into it. Boom. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Nike General Purpose Sneaker by Tom Sachs. It delivers on what it promises. I mean, it's boring, I'll give it that. This sneaker makes me feel a lot of different ways for a lot of different reasons. But before we get into the sneaker in detail, which really isn't much to talk about, let's talk about the packaging. All right, as far as the box, of course, you got a special edition box here. This box, if you guys are familiar with the Tom Sachs projects of yesteryear, looks a lot like the same vein of those other Tom Sachs projects. You have Nike Craft on the top of the box here. Of course, that is the kind of collaborative, ongoing partnership that Tom Sachs has with Nike. You also have General Purpose Shoe on the side here, Tom Sachs right here, and then on the bottom of the box, own less, do more. I like that. Everything about Tom Sachs' aesthetic, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit, feels very homemade. It feels very amateur. That's kind of his thing, but it works. All right, getting back to the shoe. The idea behind the shoe here, of course, is that it is a general purpose sneaker, is that it shouldn't have anything flashy behind it. It should literally just be worn and used for its intended purpose, which is to get you where you need to go. So with that, Tom Sachs and Nike really concentrated more on the quality of the materials, much more than they did the aesthetic of the shoe, because I'm not gonna lie to you, the aesthetic of the shoe is about a 6 out of 10, but the materials do make it a good shoe. For instance, on the upper of the shoe here, you'll notice this kind of knit material up here. Now, it says on the website that it can resist a few raindrops. I'll explain why that actually matters in just a second here, but it's kind of weather resistant, it's very sturdy, it's very durable. Now, you also have kind of this rubberized white swoosh on the lateral and medial side. You also have kind of this rubberized feeling mudguard extending down into the toe box of the shoe as well in this cream color. On the eyelets, wrapping around the heel of the shoe and around the toe box of the shoe, this really nice suede as well. Really, really nice. It's a well-made shoe. On the eyelets, right above the midsole here, wrapping around the heel and wrapping around the toe box, you have this really nice suede here. It's a very nice suede, very soft. It's a good feeling shoe. Again, this shoe is all about the quality. Taking a top down look at the shoe here, you see more of that knit and kind of that rubberized material here in the toe box of the shoe. Moving up from there, very drab colored laces on these. And then of course you have that classic looking white Nike tag on the tongue. Now I do like the two blue pulls here, the two little tabs here. Again, makes it very easy to get in and out of the shoe, so I did like that. I also like the little hit of Tom Sachs signature handwriting on the back here with the Tom Sachs, of course, the serial number 2020.331, which is weird because the production dates on the tag of the shoe say 2021, but maybe that's when this shoe was actually designed. I'm not sure. Moving around to the heel of the shoe here, this D-Boss Nike emblem here in Tom Sachs original handwriting. They've really been talking about what they call this 3-piece cup sole here. The first piece of that is the gum rubber on the midsole. The second piece of that is on the outsole here with the little Nike Craft emblem, and of course the patent right in the middle of the foot as well. That is the Bill Bowerman patent for the waffle sole, the classic waffle sole. And the third piece of that is the EVA foam inside of the shoe, giving the shoe its comfort. Now, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, the shoe wasn't really that comfortable to me personally. It actually gets a little tighter right here in the foot. That's just me. But if you guys found it comfortable, you can sound off in the comments and let me know. But me personally, I didn't really even find the shoe that comfortable. And on the insole of the shoe, blue insole to match those blue tabs there with the Nike Craft emblem on the heel. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the general purpose shoe from Tom Sachs's Nike Craft and Nike. Now, here's the thing about this shoe. There's two things that I kind of want to dig into. The first thing is Tom Sachs. If you're not really familiar in the marketing behind the sneaker and why I think the marketing was absolutely brilliant. And then the other thing that I want to talk about as well is the weird kind of interesting revelation that I had doing my research about this shoe about one of my favorite YouTubers on the platform. But let's get back to the shoe. You guys know, like I know, that the Tom Sachs general purpose shoe was actually released via a raffle on Tom Sachs's website. Now, I found that very interesting, like maybe this was just a limited run so that they could see how the sneaker performed, but I feel like we always knew that the sneaker was going to sell out or whatever the case may be just because it was a hyped up project from Tom Sachs. If you guys don't know, Tom Sachs has had some of the most expensive, most valuable, non-major collaborative projects from Nike in quite some time. He's not Virgil Abloh. He wasn't really big in streetwear. As a matter of fact, he's what they call the handyman of high art. If you guys are familiar with Tom Sachs at all, then you know that he really got his claim to fame making very obscure, very abstract art made out of common items that you can see anywhere from the street to the junkyard, but making really dope, really interesting, creative pieces out of it. Everything from a Chanel guillotine to a fake McDonald's cart on a contrived Mars lunar rover. I've always been fascinated with Tom Sachs for quite a while because of that, not just because of his fascination with space and Mars, but because of the impact that he's had without even trying to have it in terms of the sneaker community. If you guys remember, the Mars Yard 1.0 dropped way back in the day. I want to say it was 2012, 2011, don't quote me on that. But apparently they found some flaws with that 1.0. If you guys remember, they redid it, revamped it. They came out with the 2.0 with the different upper that was a little bit more water resistant. And you guys remember the only way that you could even get the 2.0 was by doing that obstacle course that he had, which I found very interesting. But to these days, you don't even want to know what that sneaker is going for. I think in my size it's going for like $7,000. Granted, that Mars Yard 2.0 was actually a good looking shoe as well. Way better looking than the GPS. And then he came out with that crazy looking astronaut boot, the Overshoe. If you guys remember that shoe as well, it was interesting because I felt like at that point people were trying to force themselves to like it and force other people to buy into it. Like, especially, I'm just speaking from a sneaker perspective. Like, from an art perspective and a design perspective, that's probably something different. But from a sneaker perspective, it was funny just seeing people walking around with that shoe on because I was like, come on. Really? And then, of course, like sneakers tend to do, the desire died down, the hype died down, and the prices ended up going down accordingly. But the name Tom Sachs always rings bells. There's something about sneakers that always makes us feel like we have a part of something that we don't have, even if it just means that we have something with somebody's name on it. For instance, a lot of people are buying up off-white stuff, even if it doesn't look that good to them, because for a long time, people couldn't afford a lot of the off-white sneakers that were dropping. So when other off-white sneakers would drop, like say those track shoes that came out a while ago, or even the Air Force One mids, a lot of people are kind of buying those just because they get to finally hold a shoe that says off-white care of Nike on the side of it when they really couldn't afford those from yesteryear. And I feel like a lot of that same idea has been passed on to Tom Sachs as well, because when these initially came out, people didn't even care about what the shoe was. All they saw was limited, Tom Sachs, Nike sneaker, maybe I can get it at retail price and sell them for a lot of money. That was it. That's where a lot of people's thinking stopped. And the market shot up accordingly when these first dropped, especially if you were lucky enough to be able to get the Raffle win, which of course added another layer of hype to it. Then you were one of the chosen ones. You got to cash out. But when people actually saw what these sneakers look like, the prices ended up going way down. Because remember, what do I always tell you guys? Resale price is what? The intersection between hype and wearability. The more wearable a sneaker is, the more hype a sneaker is, the more money it's worth on the market. These had a lot of hype behind them because they were just Tom Sachs. Even though people aren't like super familiar with him, all they kind of know is like his name is associated with a shoe that's worth $7,000. But when they actually got the shoe in hand, they were like, oh, he was serious. These really are boring. So let's talk about that boring aspect of this shoe. Tom Sachs is a lot more than meets the eye. We'll talk about that in a second. But specifically when it comes to Nike and his partnership with Nike, this stems from his relationship that he's had with Mark Parker. That's why they said that these sneakers are 10 years in the making, because I feel like for a long time, he's probably been asking Nike for a shoe that he can make that's literally for everybody. But because Nike is a marketing company first, I feel like Nike said, okay, well, here's the deal. This will be a true collaboration. That was one of Tom Sachs' requirements when it came to his Nike collaborations. They wanted to be a true collaboration for brand new products, brand new silhouettes. He didn't just want to slap colors on a pre-existing model. He wanted to do his own thing. He wanted to create his own thing. And Nike said, okay, cool, but you got to let us take care of the marketing. And the marketing worked, combining his extreme artistic talent and creativity and kind of obscure, unorthodox way that he did things, and combine that with the marketing machine that's Nike, and you create a lot of magic out here. When it came to these shoes, it was the exact same thing. Nike knew that the way that they released this shoe was gonna have a lot to do with the hype that they drove up on this sneaker. And so when they came out with the advertisement that these sneakers were boring, in my opinion, Nike knew that these sneakers were going to be the very antithesis of boring when it came to marketing. You hype a shoe up and you call it boring, that's only gonna make people want the shoe more. It's only gonna make people wanna see what this sneaker is about and make people wanna get it in their hands, especially if you slap the name Tom Sachs on it. Now, Tom did take to Nike to say that this sneaker is what is known as perennial. That means perpetual. That means that this sneaker is anticipated for more restocks down the line. As a matter of fact, Tom said that there was going to be a restock happening in August, and we appreciate that. That means that the sneaker's value is going to go down even more on the resale market. I believe that Tom Sachs truly did want a lot of people to have this shoe. He just wanted people to wear it and to just beat it up and to do whatever they were supposed to do with it. Again, that was the idea behind his entire wear testers program that he did, choosing people to test out products like the GPS. He wanted people to beat their shoes up, to wear them, and to add more character to them, because that's what makes sneakers and a lot of other things that we wear individual. It's what makes them special, not the fact that they look like this brand new, but it's what they have to tell, the stories that they have to tell after you wear the shoe, the stains you put on them, the dirt you put on them, the creases you put on them. That all has to do with the story, the individual story of this particular pair of sneakers. Now, why does Tom Sachs care so much about that? Well, again, if you're familiar with Tom Sachs' artistry, then you understand that he has a knack for making a lot of things his own. As a matter of fact, he grew up not having much money, so the way that he got into art was he would create things that he couldn't have, like cameras or other things. Now, of course, that's exploded into the empire that he has now, but Tom Sachs has always been one of those artists that never took himself too seriously, even though he took himself very seriously. The really interesting contradiction that lies within him as an artist, I think, is one of those things that really captures my attention. For instance, if you look inside of the box here, not only does it talk about what Nike Craft is and talks about how this is based on the activities of your life and tells your story, but if you actually look at the inside of the left portion of the box here, you'll notice these little pictures here. And a lot of people wonder, what is that? These are bullets, like bullets from a gun. This is what's known as the 10 bullet philosophy behind Tom Sachs, which is one of his most famous videos ever to come out. Let me explain. The 10 bullet philosophy is a really interesting training guide, kind of an employee manual, if you will, for people that come to work in his studio. Everybody within that studio has to abide by these 10 rules, these 10 guidelines, in order to ensure a safe and productive workplace. Now, I won't go through all 10 of the bullets with you guys. I will probably put a link down below so that you guys can watch that 10 bullet video for yourself, because it is pretty fascinating. But the person that directed that video is kind of what I want to transition into. It's a guy named Van Neistat. If you guys aren't familiar with who Van Neistat is, he's a very talented director. He does pretty much all of the video work for Tom Sachs. If you go on Tom Sachs' YouTube channel, you can probably see a ton of videos, and Van Neistat has probably directed the vast majority of those videos. But his style of video is very different. It's also very unorthodox. It's also very abstract. He uses a lot of stop motion and things like that when it comes to making his videos. And he takes a lot of what he puts into his videos from the ideologies from Tom Sachs. Now, like I said, I won't go through all 10 of the bullets, but I bring up Van Neistat and Tom Sachs because one of the bullets I found was very interesting, and that bullet is always be knolling. Now, what in the world does that mean? We're going a little deep, but stick with me. I'm going somewhere with this. The term knolling actually comes from a furniture shop that was actually known as Knoll, or Florence Knoll is the name of the person who owned that furniture shop. And the idea behind the furniture was that the furniture was very angular. So the idea of knolling was putting things in such a way that it was very angular. Everything kind of fit into one another, even if it looked very amateur and very homemade, but it was a nice, clean aesthetic that allowed you to actually see all of your tools or everything that you needed right in front of your face. Nothing was hidden and everything was very neat and very angular. Now, I bring that up, and Van Neistat, because one of the largest YouTubers and one of the biggest bloggers that I've known, Casey Neistat, Van Neistat's brother, actually adapted that term knolling and literally used it for pretty much the aesthetic of his entire channel. If you guys aren't familiar with Casey Neistat as well, like I mentioned, he's a very big blogger. I think he's got over 12 million subscribers. He quit doing his daily vlog a while ago to spend more time with his family, but he came out with some incredible vlogs that really felt like you were watching a movie about his life every day. I would tune in and watch his videos every day. And I always found the way that he kept his studio was very interesting, how meticulous it was and how different it was and how obscure it was, only to realize that he had basically taken a ton of inspiration directly from Tom Sachs. And then I realized while doing research for this video that Casey worked for Tom Sachs, and that was one of the first jobs that actually broke him into the industry that he ended up becoming really entrenched with. His brother was doing video work. Casey didn't really know what he wanted to do, so he got up underneath his brother, did more video work with him, was working for Tom Sachs at the studio doing little menial tasks, and then before you realize it, Casey was off doing his own video work, creating his own video channel. What was interesting also about Casey is that Casey ended up, as he got bigger and bigger, doing a lot of work with Nike. He did commercial work with Nike. He actually was one of the first people that debuted the Nike mag back when they were getting ready to auction the shoe off, and Tiffany Beers and the entire Nike team showed up to his studio to let him try on the shoe and do a video about it. So Casey is no stranger to Nike. It actually feels like Casey's done everything with Nike except have his own product. Despite all the work that Casey did and the money that he made and the things that he did with Nike, Casey never actually was able to come out with his own product, his own shoe, his own clothing, his own apparel, anything. Now, if you want my opinion, I think that has to do with the video that he put out with one of his last projects where he basically pitched Nike something and then they basically gave him some money and he took all the money and went on a vacation and made a completely different video. But luckily for him, the video ended up doing so well. It was like one of Nike's most viewed videos on YouTube. So basically he got away with it. But Nike as a company doesn't really like when people go against what they say that they're gonna do for them. So I don't know if that got him in the doghouse a little bit. Hopefully it didn't. But what I found really interesting was that in a lot of interviews and things like that, Casey would never really reference Tom Sachs. And apparently people dug up some old tweets from back in the day where he took a lot of credit for a lot of the things that he did, but that seems to kind of contradict with a lot of the things that Casey has dedicated his life to, and even the font of which he put some of his tattoos on his arm, because it looks oddly familiar to the font on the bottom of the Tom Sachs box. It was a bit of a letdown to realize that Casey had taken so much information from Tom Sachs while never really talking about him or never really, in my opinion, giving Tom his flowers. I just wondered if that had anything to do with the fact that Tom had this incredible partnership with Nike. Maybe it didn't. I'm not trying to stir the pot here. I'm not trying to be that guy, but it is a bit of a letdown because I felt like Casey's unique style was truly a unique style, and it seems like it really wasn't. So when I look at these sneakers, they're a lot deeper than me than even what they were advertised as, even what Tom Sachs wanted them to be. As somebody that's on the YouTube platform, I actually think even deeper into a shoe like this because it makes me wonder, what would have happened if Casey Neistat got his own shoe? Maybe we'll never know. But as far as these go, they're not bad. They're just not that great. They're boring. And I guess that's what they were intended to be. All right, guys, that's pretty much all that I got about these. Now it's time for you guys to sound off down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about the general purpose shoe, or the GPS, from Tom Sachs, Nike Craft, and Nike. Are these ones that you guys are going for with the restock? Were you lucky enough to get handed these through the raffle? Did you sell them? Did you keep them? Are you wearing them? What are you doing with them? Sound off down below. Let me know. Of course, right down in the comments, make sure that you click on that subscribe button so we can welcome you into the Sneaker Fetish family, to make sure you don't miss out on any more heat that comes through like these, because I guarantee you I got a lot more heat on the way. As always, I want to thank you guys for joining me here today on Sneaker Fetish, taking a look at these with me, unboxing them with me for a couple of minutes. I go by the name of Kari. This is the General Purpose Shoe by Tom Sachs, Nike Craft, and Nike. And until next time, I'm out.